Hey everyone, welcome back to this series on a very opinionated ASP.NET architecture setup. I feel like I need another word at the end to really say that, hey, what I really mean is this is like how we should, or how I think we should be setting up our projects. Anyway, that's a tangent. This is too early for a tangent. Let's actually get into it. This is video number 3, and we're talking about REPR controllers, REPR. So, we are today going to go ahead and add actual controllers to the project that we've been working on, and we're going to use the REPR pattern, REPR. So if you're not familiar with the REPR pattern, there are a couple of links, and this concept. This is the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about starting this series on a very opinionated way of developing ASP.NET applications. So I first heard about this a couple of years ago. If you're familiar with Ardalis or Steve Smith, he has written a lot of just development topics over the years, and I first saw this and thought, hey, this is great. So there are a few links that are right here. I kind of already have them up in some tabs, so we'll look at them. The very first one is from DevIQ, I think also written by Steve Smith. I should scroll and find out. I did not look. Anyway, again, another tangent. Too many tangents today. So, REPR, I don't know what it stands for. I tried to look it up. I think it's RE request per response. It's written somewhere. I should have spent more time, but I didn't. That one's on me. Anyway, the idea is single request object, single response object, single endpoint. That's kind of it. There are a couple of different ways you can go about setting up your application to do that. Ardalis has a framework, or a library, I guess, not a framework, a library, that he has worked on. You can kind of see right here that he no longer really recommends using this. Instead, the project itself has grown to something called fast endpoints, which I was actually just looking up before working on this video. I've never worked with this. This looks really cool. There are a couple of things I immediately really like about it, and I might start using this. I don't know, maybe later today, even. I do have to do some more research for myself, but it doesn't matter what library we use. Following the REPR pattern, I think is still going to be really useful. So let's actually get back to our code. Oh, whoops, I made a mistake. I had one more slide. Sorry about that. Before we get to code, just a reminder. Everything in this video series, these are all very opinionated, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, insults, etc., there are the YouTube comments or social media, Blue Sky, LinkedIn. You can find the links on my personal site, programmerl.com. All right. Now that that's out of the way, let's actually get back to the code. So just like before, I copied the code that we have directly from the previous weeks. So here we are in week 3. And let me go ahead and close a bunch of these tabs. As far as the code goes, this is going to be pretty much just by itself. So if you have missed the first 2 videos, no problem. You don't have to go back. It's not directly building on some stuff. We are going to reference a few things, but otherwise, you're good. So this is about controllers. And in the past, right, we have, or in the past of this application at least, we have just had a single controller, the weather one, right? This is the default one. When you make a new application, the default template just creates this one for us. And so the thing about the REPR pattern that is different about this is there's less stuff in general. So what I mean by that is normally, if you have multiple endpoints, what you're going to do is you're going to just say, hey, we're going to group our endpoints into a single file, right? So the route is going to be, in this case, /weather forecast. And then you're going to go ahead and you'll have a get or multiple gets, right? You can set the name. Maybe you'll have some posts, that kind of thing, right? And all of those will be grouped. All of the weather forecast endpoints are grouped in a single controller. The REPR pattern says that's too much stuff in a file. Let's go ahead and actually separate these into multiple files. And so in this case, these 2 endpoints are going to be 2 separate files, 2 separate controllers. So let's go ahead and delete this because we're not using it anymore. And let's go ahead and kind of organize this a little bit better. So we're going to go to ratings, because again, this is a feedback app, and we want to get ratings from something. And so now we're going to actually add 2 separate controllers. So I already have the code for that over here. I'm just going to copy paste it. And let's actually talk about what's going on in here. So there are some compiler errors. We'll get to that in a second. So just ignore with it. Bear with me for a second. Ignore it. So this is still an API controller. Notice the name getRatingsController, and that's because we only have a single endpoint in this class, a single get endpoint. We're no longer specifying a grouped route at the top. Instead, we're just going to have the /ratings. Now, this is something that, personally, I don't like that. We will work with that a little bit later. That's actually going to be the next video where we will improve on this. But for now, just bear with me. We're receiving an instance of getRatingsRequest, right? So we have an object or a class that is, the name of that request is similar to the controller, and the response is getRatingsResponse, right? So again, one-to-one matching. And we can scroll down here. So here's the request object. So this is a class. Because I really like the nullable reference stuff, right? We're saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and require this stuff. So unfortunately, this is where one of the things about the nullable references isn't great. Within our code, we have to say, hey, it's required. And then separately, we also, because of deserialization stuff at runtime, we have to say this is required for the ASP.NET side of things, right? It's required on two separate ways. It is kind of a hassle. If you're not used to it, it's annoying. I get it. But anyway, so we're able to just put all of our request object stuff into a single file. So in this case, we're saying that the count is going to be from the query. If we wanted to have, in addition to that, like a body, we can go ahead and do that. That'll be in the next example, but I will be showing that in a second. So you can go ahead and do that. If you want to go ahead and add, more stuff, if you want to say like from route or something, and this can be, like string ID or something to that effect, that's an option. You can go ahead and do that. All of that is within a single class, and then that means that you have less stuff that you're really throwing into the method header, right? So it feels a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to understand. And the response is going to be a record. In this case, in my mind, I prefer using records for the response because there's no deserialization into our application. So we can just say, hey, everything in this constructor is going to be required. If it's not required, then why have it there? Or at least specify in your code, okay, that's good, it's null or something to that effect, right? Okay, let's actually fix some of these compiler errors because they're bothering me. So the very first one right here, the very first one is going to be this last one on the bottom, the immutable array. We don't have a using reference, so I'm going to add that. And personally, I really like immutable collections. I think that should be our default for any kind of collection that we have in our application, unless we have a good reason, right? We should default to something that makes our code a little bit easier to read. So because of that, I'm getting rid of it in this file, and I'm going to go down to our usings, and I'm going to make this a global using, because that's going to keep showing up. Trust me, it'll keep showing up in this code base. Awesome. So that gets rid of this error down here, and then this one right here where we're just creating a new instance of that. The other warning, or error, sorry, that we have, this is from our Sonar Analyzers NuGet package that we added. This warning is saying, or error, I keep saying the wrong one, warning. This error is saying that, hey, you need to have the actual controller prefix. And here, I'll click on it. So here in Sonar, it has its rule. What it wants us to do is to add a route, right? Because normally, when you're creating your controllers, you're saying, hey, here's the route, and we're grouping everything together, right? So it's like that, directory, child directory, that kind of thing, right? But we're not doing that when we're following the REPR pattern. So instead, and we can, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it this way. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say, what is this, S6931? Let me actually copy paste that. I'm going to go to our editor config and scroll all the way to the bottom. And let's just go ahead and, I'm just going to ignore it because it's not going to matter. Oops, got to have that S at the beginning. Close that. All right. Now that error is taken care of. So normally that is something you probably would care about, but we're going to make some more changes in the next video. So video 4, where we're not going to care about this too much. And so you'll understand why then. Now, if you choose not to follow what I say next week, then yeah, you probably want to. Honestly, I'm never sure. You probably can add a route and then say, the name of it is going to be, probably ratings. And then I don't know what happens when you have 2 or 3 controllers where the route is /ratings. That's the only reason why I'm not doing it. I didn't check ahead of time because I never write code that uses that concept. All right, so now we have our get endpoint. And so we have validation for our request. We are specifying exactly what the response is going to be. We're creating those values. We're hard coding those right now. We'll actually implement this a little bit later in some future video. But right now, just to show off the REPR pattern, this is kind of all we need. So let's go ahead and hit F5. Let's just test it out. Let's see what it looks like. Make sure it works. All that stuff. All right, so here's Aspire. There we go. Now we've got Swagger. We have our ratings. Let's try it out. Let's say a count of 5. That's not implemented right. It doesn't matter. Cool. We're hitting our localhost, our /ratings endpoint. We have our URI, right? The count equals 5. Perfect. And we get that hard-coded response. Awesome. That is exactly what we are expecting, right? So, perfect. Now that's just a get. As far as this application goes, we're also at some point going to want to save these values. We're going to want to receive some rating and persist it in some way, right? So let's go ahead and add another endpoint for that, another controller. And I'm just going to copy paste an existing file that I have off the screen. And so this is going to be post new rating controller. So a couple of things. You probably noticed the name. I put get ratings controller up here, post new rating controller. That's just my naming convention, however you prefer. But personally, I feel like if I look over here at the ratings, it's easy enough to kind of look at the name of the file and understand a couple of things about it, right? We're getting the ratings, cool, that's a lookup. New rating, in my mind, that means we're creating it, and also separately, it's a post, so that's how we interact with that. So, all right, so now over here we have our HTTP post header. We're saying ratings/new rating, so it's kind of grouped together. Not exactly, it's going to look weird, but that's fine. We're not actually doing anything right now because, like I said, we're just showing off what the REPR pattern can do. So we're just going to say, okay, we're good. That's it. But as far as our input goes, right, we still have our request. And so we're going to scroll over here and look at our actual request. So notice that we're making an entirely new class for the body. And so what that means is we have a single property for what the request body is. But if we wanted to, add something else, right? Remember I gave that example earlier. If I wanted to say, hey, this is something like, from the route, maybe later, if we want to add like an update, we can, string ID. If we wanted to have something like update comment or something, right? Then we would have our route as one property, and then the body would be the separate property. So we'll go ahead and delete that because that's not what we're doing here for the post. And so all of the logic, or all the validation logic and everything is within the class itself, within the body property. So again, we have our rating, 1 to 5 from the body. Notice we still have to have the from body in each of those properties. Yeah, so we can go ahead and just, receive an instance of that and we're good. So I'll go ahead and hit F5 and we'll see what this looks like in Swagger. And we'll go ahead and click on that. Now, unfortunately, it does kind of look a little ugly, right? We have the /ratings and /rating/new rating, so it's not grouped together like we would want it to be. Like I said, this problem specifically, I'm going to address in the next video because we're going to be making other changes to these endpoints. So let's actually try it out, and because the whole body is JSON, we have to actually enter a value. So let's give a rating of 5, comments are string, sure, that's fine. Oh, I should add a breakpoint, I guess. Let's see. There we go. Keep hitting Alt-Tab into the wrong spot. Okay, there we go. Execute, perfect. We can see, hey, awesome, we have our body property, and that has our, comments and rating. And if you really want to check about the validation, let's just go ahead and get rid of that rating, right? Because the rating is required, the comments are not. So we can hit execute. We don't even hit that breakpoint because we're told, hey, this object was missing the required property rating. So perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. And so that is it as far as this demo goes. So let's minimize that, get rid of this. Actually, you know what? I am going to make one last change. We should be a little more strict about some of our returns. So this actually should be a 204 no content because we're not actually returning anything. That's just a me thing. I don't think that's something we need to care about too much, but it is something I noticed just now. All right, and that is the REPR pattern. Now, the benefits of this, the thing that I really like about it, is that I go to this endpoint, and I know everything that I need to about this endpoint specifically. I know exactly what the inputs are, right? I know where those are, right? I can just look at this file. Same with, sorry, these inputs. Same with the response, right? I can scroll down and I can see, hey, this is the actual response being returned. Normally, the common practice is we have multiple, endpoints in a controller, and then we have all of the request objects and the response objects somewhere else, right? You have your DTOs folder. Sometimes people will just go ahead and use the same, input request object or DTO, whatever you want to call it. That class is going to be used for all of those endpoints in a single controller, and that personally I think is bad because that means that now you don't always know as a developer on the team. You don't always know, hey, is this property used for this endpoint? Maybe 3 out of 5 of them are used for all of the endpoints, but now you have 2 other properties in this class that are only used on some of them, and that is confusing, right? As a developer, if you don't know what's required or optional for an endpoint, then it's an easy way to end up with bugs at some point, right? What if you want to refactor? What if you want to change something? Or you get to a point where you're doing a big refactor and you accidentally delete something that's needed. You think, oh, hey, it looks like the front end doesn't actually use this property, so we can go ahead and delete it. Turns out there was some other front end that was using that property, and now you broke someone else, right? You don't want to do that. So being a lot more strict on this kind of stuff really helps keep things clean, and it tells us, the developers, right, how things are working, right? It's self-documenting and all that kind of stuff. One of the downsides to this, or another downside to this, is you kind of have more files, which is a pro and a con in a way, right? Personally, I think that this is not too bad, right? If you're not used to a ton of files, I get it. But personally, once I started using the REPR pattern and started using all these extra files, I felt like it was a lot easier to just kind of scroll, right? Because now I know, hey, what's the get, what's the post. It's the same thing as scrolling through the code in a file, but now it's just one line, versus now I have to scroll. Method is 20 lines. Let me scroll. Another method's 30 lines. Let me scroll. Stuff like that, right? So that's it. That is the REPR pattern. Again, questions, comments, concerns, insults, all of that into the YouTube comments or social media. So until then, take care, everyone.